Hi, everybody. Welcome to Recovery Road 707. My name's Angie, and I am a person in long-term recovery. I could also say I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I'm all of the things. But my purpose today, or my purpose for this channel, is to just tell recovery stories. Recovery stories were incredibly important to me as I started coming around to the rooms of AA and NA back in the late 80s. And to this day still are incredibly important to me. It's the backbone to my connection to the recovery world. And so I thought, how much fun would that be to just make stories or relay stories that other people can hear, especially when they're struggling. Because when I first got sober and for like the first 15 years, I did a lot of struggling. So, the story that came to mind today, I was actually with a client earlier and they reminded me of this story. When I was maybe about a year sober, I used to have to ride the bus to get to a meeting, and that was really hard because where I lived was very rural. But there was a bus, and it got really hard. I just was really struggling to catch the bus and go in, 25 miles to go to a meeting, but I did it. And there came a time where I just was finding it really difficult, and getting rides was hard. And then one day, lo and behold, something happened. I was at the meeting, and I know what it was. I was going to bring my child to the meeting with me, which I didn't have custody at the time of my children, but I was working on it. And I happened to have one of my children with me, and so I was going to bring them to the meeting. And when I got there, they told me that no children were allowed. And I did not know that. And I was really upset about it. Threw a huge fit, um, embarrassed myself, embarrassed my child. Um, well, come to find out, it wasn't the group that didn't allow children. It was the church that allowed us to have the meetings in their building that did not want children in there. And so, after going to my sponsor and explaining to her how rotten they were and how horrible it was that they wouldn't allow women with children in the meeting, she explained to me that I didn't have all the information. And she called it contempt prior to investigation, which I love saying that to my husband, but it was contempt prior to investigation. And she explained to me that it wasn't the meeting, it was the church, and that they had a right to do that. And so she encouraged me to make amends to the group, which I was not going to do. And maybe I should just start my own meeting closer to home. And I literally just laughed at her when she said that, because me start a meeting? I I'm still just barely making it to brush my teeth every day and get out to a meeting. Like, how am I going to have a meeting? And she told me what I needed to do, and then to pray about it. So I did. I prayed about it for, I don't know, couple of weeks, I guess, and it just worked out. I had mentioned it to a couple of people, and this guy came up to me in my town and said, "Hey, you can use the Grange if you want to have our meetings. I'll give you a key, and as long as you clean it up when you're finished, you're welcome to use it." So I decided to set a Sunday afternoon meeting, and I took out my mom's old typewriter and typed up, how it works, the promises and the 12 traditions, and some other stuff, just, I don't know, found stuff out of the big book and some pamphlets. I was going to say online, but that would be a lie. Found some stuff and just typed it all up, and basically did the meetings just like you would, um, like I did at all my other meetings. And then I borrowed $10 from my dad and went and bought a can of Folgers coffee and some creamer and some cups and some sugar. And I started a meeting. I put up a flyer at our post office and a couple other places. And that first Sunday I went down there and I opened it up and made the coffee, and I sat there and nobody showed up. But my sponsor had told me, if you're going to start a meeting, if nobody shows up, you have to stay for the whole hour. So I sat there for the whole hour and read my big book. And I was really irritated because how dare nobody show up for my meeting. And then I closed it up, came back the following week, sat there, nobody showed up. This time I did all the readings. Even I acted as if people were there. So I did the readings. I picked a topic and I sat there and talked to myself. This went on for about 4 or 5 weeks. And then one Sunday, somebody showed up. And then the following Sunday, a few more people showed up, and more people, and more people. And the next thing I knew, I had a nice little group of about 10 people every Sunday. And that was my group that was born out of a resentment and a little bit of willingness to do something really scary. The cool thing is that meeting was started in 1990 and it is still happening today. It's gone through a lot of hands, a lot of people, have taken it over and so forth. Of course, nobody's in charge, but there was one point where it almost died out because I moved, but somebody was willing to come in and kind of reorganize and help people keep it moving. So that's been just such a great thing. And I had moved away in 2000 to Nashville from my hometown and was there for 25 years. And when I moved back in 2023, I said to myself, "Self, why don't you go and see if that meeting's still happening?" And lo and behold, it's still happening. So that's pretty exciting stuff. And that's just a fun little story about how resentment can lead to good things. And the other thing that I did go back and make amends to that group, and I've had to make amends to that group twice now. That time back in the, 90s, early 90s, 1990, as a matter of fact, and then in 2023, I had to make amends to that group too. So, um, and that was because they do things a little differently, and I didn't know that, and you can't just pop in and say, "Hey, my name's Angie, I'm an alcoholic." You actually have to be called on. And I didn't know that. And my sponsor had told me that I needed to go to a meeting that night and introduce myself and tell them that I needed a sponsor because she was in Tennessee and I was in California. And I did that and they gave me a hard time about doing that. And I said, "Well, I'm just following directions of my sponsor. So I'm sorry if I'm not following your rules," but I did go back and make amends to them. So that's my story for today. I was a mess. I hope you enjoy. Bye, friends.